With Secret Wars 2 over and done with, the next era of X-Men pretty much consists of three separate storylines that all converge for the first main X crossover, the Dark Mutant Massacre. With barely any miniseries either, this means that this chunk of X-Men and New Mutants can be read straight through until the crossover, as well as the first chunk of our newest X book, X Factor, reuniting the original 5 X-Men. As a brief recap, the X-Men got a new member in the telepathic Rachel Summers, who is Cyclops' and Jean's daughter from the Days of Future Past apocalyptic future. The X-Men also lost Xavier to space and had him replaced by Magneto. Storm also lost her powers but remained leader of the team, forcing Cyclops to stay in his frequently unhappy marriage with Madeline and his son Nathan. The New Mutants also greatly expanded their roster, adding the techno-organic alien Warlock, the linguistic Doug, and the sorceress Ileana to the team, as well as seeing the return of Sean, bringing their roster up to 9. When we last saw them, they were deleted from existence and were resurrected by the omnipotent Beyonder. While it could fit better elsewhere, I think a good place to start is our first and only mini-series of the era, Longshot, written by ex-editor Ann Nocenti and drawn by Arthur Adams. It's pretty adjacent to the main X-Men books at this point, but it contains plenty of stuff that will come into play later. The main premise of the series sees our nameless hero thrown to Earth while running from some demons, and he gets into some shenanigans, being dubbed Longshot due to his incredible luck. Longshot first helps a girl rescue her stolen baby from the demons, whose member Spiral is using it to try and open a portal. Longshot befriends a good demon nicknamed Pup, then gets cast as a stunt actor with fellow reckless stunt person Ricochet Rita, although Longshot is seemingly killed. He is saved by a depressed dude named Jinx, so they rob an electric company and cause a blackout across Manhattan. This puts Longshot on everyone's radar, so after escaping from Spider-Man and She-Hulk, he gives some kids called the Brat Pack some diamonds from the electric company, and they help him confront Pup, who has grown into a massive demon starving for the magic power he's absorbing from the Earth. Longshot gets help from an old friend Quark, who is a goat man, but gets thrown into a slump, eventually getting out of it, helping Quark and Doctor Strange kill Pup. Meanwhile, Spiral and Longshot's owner, Mojo, kidnap Rita and bring her across the multiverse, hoping she'll bring them to Longshot. But she doesn't, and ends up screaming silently into infinity. So Longshot has been regaining his memory throughout the series and learns that he was created by this dude Arise, with a Z, to serve the slaves of the spineless ones like Mojo, as well as all of other Mojo's slaves. But Longshot led an ongoing but as of yet unsuccessful rebellion and escaped to Earth. So Mojo is out to rule Earth and kill Longshot in the process. Which brings us to our final issue, where Mojo mind controls people into building him a tower so he can mind control more people. Mojo is also incredibly annoying and obnoxious, which works for the character, but dear lord. At least Spiral is as apathetic towards Mojo as I am. Either way, Longshot and Quark team up to destroy Mojo's tower, and with help from Doctor Strange and a healed Rita, send Mojo and Spiral back to their dimension, with Longshot, Quark, and Rita following to finish him for good, which is pretty much where the series ends. I think Nocenti and Adams were hoping for a sequel or ongoing, but it never happened, probably because the series was just okay. It has strong anti-Hollywood and anti-violence messages which can stick out at times, but don't hurt the series too much. It's just really slow to start, and the ending is only kind of worth it. With the only mini of the era done, it's time to start X Factor. X Factor actually starts with a two-part setup in Avengers 263 and Fantastic Four 286. To summarize the important parts, Avengers sees a cocoon pulled from the bottom of Jamaica Bay that, unknown to the Avengers, contains the comatose but still telepathic body of the long-thought deceased Jean Grey. The issue actually ends with a name drop of Jean, and despite her being mentioned a lot in the X-Men with Rachel, I wonder how many Avengers readers recognize an X-Men character who's been dead for 6 years. On to Fantastic Four, where Jean finally awakes. She, the Fantastic Four, and Captain America head to Jean's house, where Jean accesses the magic crystal the Shi'ar made to honor Jean's memory. The issue serves largely as a recap of Jean's transformation into Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, and eventual death, before revealing that it is all a lie, as the Cosmic Phoenix Force recreated Jean's body to serve as a vessel for itself, complete with Jean's memories, while storing Jean in Jamaica Bay to heal her from her ordeal with the solar flare that seemingly transformed her into Phoenix. Jean's underlying will is what destroyed Dark Phoenix during the Dark Phoenix saga, leaving Jean as she was way back in Uncanny X-Men 100 and with seemingly nobody to turn to, although Reed has an idea. This leads us into the brand new X Factor, opening with Cyclops hanging out with his wife Madeline, the two getting into a fight about Cyclops' divided loyalties between her and the X-Men. He's then called to New York by Angel and Mr. Fantastic, where he reunites with Jean, although he's clearly nervous and unsure of what to do due to his marriage. Beast and Iceman are also called in, and Angel's associate Cameron Hodge prevents them with Angel's new plan, X Factor, where the team disguises themselves as mutant hunters in order to capture and train mutants to use their powers. Cyclops takes a little convincing from Beast and Iceman, but he agrees, and the group goes save a kid named Rusty, who has out-of-control fire powers. Despite being torn up about Madeline, Cyclops feels like he belongs with X Factor, and the first mission is a flying success. The idea with X-Factor is that Marvel wanted to reunite the original 5 X-Men, but with Jean dead, they needed a way to bring her back, which is when Kurt Busiek came up with the idea to have the Phoenix be a separate entity than Jean. Although it is frequently argued that this detracts from the poignant ending of the Dark Phoenix saga, where Jean overcomes being corrupted by power to save her friends, I think this actually changes it to an equally poignant ending of human kindness and willpower overcoming an unstoppable force of destruction. Jean's resurrection has also been accidentally foreshadowed a lot by Rachel, who keeps saying that she's in the wrong timeline since Jean is dead, although now that she's not, it positions days of future past as a more likely occurrence. This is also the first main X-series not written by Claremont, instead written by Bob Layton and later by Louise Simonson. Issues 2 and 3 feature Beast getting kidnapped by Dr. Maddox, so Maddox can find a way to cure his son Arthur of being a mutant, as Arthur's mutation turned him into a deformed mute telepath. After taking out Maddox's hired hand tower, X-Factor saves Beast, although it is too late as he has lost his fur and blue color. Dr. Maddox also dies protecting his son from the police, leaving young Artie with X-Factor. While X-Factor continues to squabble, they are called in to investigate a boy believed to be mutant. He's not, but he sure is terrified of them, leading Jean to question their methods. Rusty also runs away and is nearly captured by the villainous Frenzy, but Artie alerts X-Factor and they save him. We then find out that Frenzy is addicted to the power of the mutant Nolan, who enhances other people's powers unless he's on drugs. Frenzy and her friends Tower, Time Shadow, and Stinger kidnap Nolan's wife, and despite X-Factor managing to talk Nolan down, Frenzy's group arrives and they manage to beat X-Factor, escaping with Nolan's leader and bringing them to their leader, the famed mutant Apocalypse. Issue 6 is Apocalypse's first full appearance, but it's mostly just as the man in the chair. X-Factor tracks down and battles Apocalypse's so-called Alliance of Evil, and when Nolan's wife dies in the crossfire, he decides to sacrifice himself as well. Apocalypse vanishes to who knows where, the Alliance of Evil is captured, and X-Factor escapes. Unfortunately for them, there are riots outside of X-Factor's mansion as people start to link them to their mutant personas, as well as 2 new mutants named Glowworm and Bulk that want to destroy X-Factor. The team splits up, half joining Glowworm as the mutants exterminators, and half as X-Factor. The X-Factor half, namely Jean and Rusty, just disguise their powers as weapons, which is what X-Factor should have done to begin with, instead of having 2 personas, but whatever. The ploy works, but public mutant hate is at an all-time high. Oh, and Jean finally learns about Cyclops' marriage after the book delaying it as long as humanly possible, so thank God for that. Unfortunately, that plot thread is to be continued in the main book, so we just have to deal with it in the first X-Factor annual. At least it never comes up and the team gets to actually act cohesively for once. They are sent to Russia to attend a mutant security conference and also break some mutants out of a prison owned by Dr. Heinrich. Heinrich is also a mutant, for some reason, who kidnaps Iceman and shapeshifts into him. The real Iceman is saved by some Russian mutants, and they help X-Factor beat Heinrich and free the mutants. Oh, and Iron Man villain Crimson Dynamo is here for no good reason. The entire issue is a slog filled with unnecessary drama and tension as X-Factor tries to hide their identities and the anti-mutant hysteria they cause, which is honestly a problem throughout all of X-Factor so far. Their actions as X-Factor fan the flames of the fire they are trying to stop, which they acknowledge, but they keep going anyways because that's the premise of the book. They've also shown that they can fake technology with their powers, so there is no reason to go into their exterminator costumes every time X-Factor needs to actually do something, as it just causes more problems than it solves. This book is easily the weakest of the main 3, and I don't imagine it will get better. A book that has been getting good is New Mutants, the next series I want to run through, picking up from their death experience with the Beyonder last time. Issue 38 starts with them all in a funk, having repeated shared nightmares of them fighting for their lives, experienced even by Magneto. The New Mutants are all acting like lifeless, emotionless zombies, and nothing that Magneto has done has been able to help. Emma Frost offers to assist them if the New Mutants transfer to her Massachusetts academy, but Magneto angrily refuses. Tending to Brightwing and getting a visit from Frogthorpe, don't worry about it, snaps Donnie out of her funk, and Warlock is doing alright as well, but when Doug's parents come asking about his health, Magneto sees no choice but to send everyone off to join Emma, secretly manipulated by Empath. Donnie and Warlock refuse to go to Emma's, and while Warlock stays with Magneto, Donnie goes back home to Colorado. Emma uses her psychic powers to bring life back to the New Mutants, but they are still having terrible nightmares and feeling generally anxious. Some of the Hellions like Jetstream and Cat's-Eye try to help out, but Empath continues to be a narcissistic prick. Magneto eventually realizes that he and the others were manipulated by Empath, so he goes off to rescue the New Mutants, but when Emma catches wind of this, she calls the police, saying that he's out to kidnap her students. The police want nothing to do with Magneto, so they call the Avengers, who intercept Magneto mid-flight. Magneto, by the way, is riding in a shapeshifted Warlock, and Hercules nearly kills him. Magneto does his best to protect Warlock and not hurt the Avengers, but is getting beaten. The New Mutants and Hellions learn that Magneto is attacking the Academy / being attacked, so Illyana goes and checks it out and pulls Magneto and Warlock out of trouble, leaving the Avengers confused but vaguely optimistic that Magneto's really changed. It's not exactly explained how, but Magneto manages to connect to the New Mutants off-panel and return them to a sense of emotional normalcy, and Emma lets them return to Xavier's school with a sense of proudness that she shows she isn't completely evil. Another good arc about depression and redemption, although the ending is a bit rushed. Issue 41 is a Donnie solo issue, having her decide who she is between her three identities of Valkyrie, Mutant, and Cheyenne. After watching her former friend be killed in a storm, despite Donnie's best efforts to save him, she decides to reconcile her identities and become the one who stops the death. It's a really solid read, and although not as recognizable as some of the X-Men solo issues, I'd put it up there with Life, Death 2 in quality. Issue 42 is a Sam solo issue, which sees him head home to spend time with his parents and introduce them to his girlfriend Layla. Unfortunately, when Lila produces an exquisite present for Sam, he assumes she stole it and scolds her, leading her to break up with him in anger. Sam is also struggling to connect with his younger brother Josh, who is scared of becoming immune and having to go away like Sam did, as he helps keep the house running. Lila's plane then goes down, so Sam and Josh go look for her, Sam using his singing voice to power up Dazzler and enabling her to free everyone from the crashed plane. Sam apologizes to Lila and she forgives him. The two go see his parents, and although Layla at first shows up in a skimpy outfit Sam's parents wouldn't approve of, once he tells her that it's time to go in, she changes into a more modest one, revealing that she just wanted to make sure he wasn't ashamed of her. Sam then introduces her to his mom, ending the issue on a beautiful, heartfelt note about second chances and believing in one another. Issue 43 sees Roberto return to the team after his break, and despite Rain going on one herself, the team decides to get their revenge on Empath for everything he's done. Illyana takes him to Limbo, where she can protect everyone with her powers, and they pretty much torture Empath by making him face his worst fears and just suffer pain as he's left powerless. Eventually, Doug decides that it doesn't feel right, that they're just stooping to Empath's level, and the others agree, except for Roberto. The other Hellions show up to get Empath, and the two teams agree that Empath is awful, but Thunderbird insists that the Hellions take care of their own to prove they are better than Empath, and the two teams part on respectful terms. Issue 44 sees Legion get possessed by his angry Jack Wayne personality, so the New Mutants go stop him with the help of Rain, who has been staying with Moira and Legion. They ultimately stop Legion by having Roberto hold him in place so Illyana can send him to Limbo and cure him there, letting Roberto face his fear of that demonic place. Issue 45 sees the New Mutants attend a public school ball, where Kitty meets a boy named Larry, and the two start to get together before Larry tries imitating some bullies by making jokes about mutants, pissing the New Mutants and Kitty off. The bullies also threaten that X-Factor is going after Larry, despite not knowing that Larry is actually a mutant, so Larry commits suicide. Kitty then gives a powerful speech about words hurt, and that you can't use slurs because they can destroy someone, and she asks people to feel how it would feel to be done to them. She punctuates this by listing every slur in the English language, not censored at all, which is some trust in Claremont by Marvel. Truth be told, the issue reads as the best written PSA of all time, which it probably is. It also features a beautiful, beautiful cover featuring Illyana and the Marvel cast for Marvel's 25th anniversary, although it's not relevant at all. Overall, this issue has been a solid string of one-offs that are probably the longest run of solid New Mutants issues yet. Back over to Uncanny X-Men, we open with the Nightcrawler solo issue in 204, as he'd been left behind during Secret Wars 2 and is questioning his life as everything seems to be fake and meaningless and the X-Men seem to be fighting against shadows they can't beat in the form of anti-mutant prejudice. To find some adventure, he winds up helping a young woman escape from the clutches of Arcade by turning Arcade's own robots against him, then learns along with the lady that she is the Queen of Ruritania. Issue 205 is a solo issue where Wolverine gets rescued by the Power Pack's Katie Power before fighting off Lady Deathstrike, a recently made cyborg ninja who wants revenge on Wolverine for what he did to her father, which we never learn. The art in this issue is spectacular, with it feeling gritty and messy to match the visceral tone of the story. Issue 206 sees the X-Men battling Freedom Force and their new member, an evil Spider-Woman. Freedom Force gets the upper hand before the police show up, and since Storm's been helping stop crooks and Freedom Force don't have an arrest warrant, Freedom Force decides to leave. It's pretty much a filler issue, which doesn't happen too much, all things considered. The next issue opens with Rachel Summers having a nightmare where she's a hound and is being hunted by Wolverine, who kills her. In the real world, the X-Men are taking refuge in the Morlock tunnels while Wolverine heals from his fight with Deathstrike and the psychic wounds Rachel's dreams are inflicting on him. After a few more dreams, Rachel tries to balance out the trouble she's caused by killing Selene, but before she can, Wolverine shows up and tells her that the X-Men don't kill, as they have a code they have to follow as heroes. Rachel won't listen, so Wolverine stabs her and leaves her in the park. Selene decides to get her revenge on the X-Men by getting the Hellfire Club's inner circle to band together and kill Rachel. The X-Men, meanwhile, are mad at Wolverine, although admit that they've been treating Rachel really harshly since she stole their essences to kill Beyonder. They decide to go find Rachel along with Callisto and Caliban the mutant tracker, and end up engaging in battle with the Hellfire Club while Rachel telepathically watches nearby, deciding that the X-Men are better off without her, and she without them. The two sides are fairly even until Nimrod shows up, searching for Rachel but intent on eliminating all the mutants. The X-Men and Inner Circle team up, and the battle is fairly well done, with Inner Circle member Harry Leland using all his strength to bring down Nimrod so Colossus can get in a few good hits. Sebastian Shaw is sent sky high, and Leland increases Shaw's mass so he can crush Nimrod, killing Leland in the process. Before Wolverine can kill Nimrod, he teleports away again, making the entire battle almost completely pointless. Speaking of completely pointless, what was Rachel up to? Well, she was lured into a magic dreamland by Spiral and fully convinced that she doesn't belong in the current time, so Spiral sends her off somewhere, presumably to Mojo, but who knows. This is Rachel's last appearance on the team for a long time, and her last appearance at all for a year and a half, and it's a really disappointing ending, to be honest. Nimrod is from her timeline, so she and Nimrod should have had some big epic battle, but nope. She just gets unceremoniously written out of the book, and Nimrod is still out there for Claremont to use whenever he needs the X-Men to fight a villain they can't beat. Unlike someone like Emma or Magneto, who adds something every time they show up and develop and grow as characters, Nimrod is a static obstacle that doesn't add anything to the universe, not even the sense of dread, as he isn't frequent enough to be a constant threat, and the government does that on their own. It's a lackluster three-parter to close out Rachel's time on the team. Issue 210 is branded as the first part of the Mutant Massacre, but it's not really. Outside of a Morlock being killed, it's mostly just the X-Men recuperating after their battle with Nimrod and unsuccessfully looking for Rachel. They also slowly start to turn public opinion in favor of mutants, but X-Factor still has a huge following, as Stroma Magneto recognizes him outside of the Hellfire Club, as the Inner Circle is extending him an invitation to join. Next up is the next Uncanny X-Men annual, but I want to look at New Mutants Annual number 2 first since it sets up the next one. Bessie Braddock, the blind telepathic sister of British superhero Captain Britain, also known as Psylocke, is kidnapped by Mojo and Spiral, and, starring in Mojo's new show, manages to kidnap Roberto, Rain, Sean's sisters, and the Brat Pack, as well as easily defeat Captain Britain. The New Mutants go help, but they all fall prey to the Brat Pack's new mind powers except for Doug and Warlock, as Warlock is able to protect Doug's mind. They also find Captain Britain reduced to the power of a child, and with his help they break into Braddock's lair, and Doug and Warlock fuse into Douglock to enter her brain and try and free her from Spiral. They manage to successfully do so through their strong will, and Braddock eliminates Spiral from her mind, freeing the others and even getting to keep her new eyes from Mojo in the process. She decides to stay at the mansion to help out, and Donnie and Doug have a potent conversation about how corruptible kids are and how they need to be protected, in the sense that they shouldn't be manipulated. Another solid annual from the New Mutants if we count the special edition. And now on to Uncanny X-Men Annual number 10, which sees Mojo spying on the X-Men through Psylocke's eyes before Longshot pops in and all the X-Men turn into kids. Mojo then kidnaps them and re-ages them into adults under his control, so the New Mutants don some kick-ass graduation costumes and confront the X-Men, reverting them back to their former selves and letting them beat Mojo. Longshot also sticks around on Earth, but we won't be seeing him for a while. The timeline then starts to get funky, as the annual has to fit there for reasons we'll see later, but X-Factor 8 takes place during Uncanny X-Men 209, and X-Factor 9 takes place immediately after 8, but during Uncanny X-Men 210, meaning there is no time for the annual, but just roll with it. X-Factor 9 sees X-Factor called in to investigate the X-Men Hellfire Club Nimrod battle, but they miss and get confronted by Freedom Force, who are there to arrest Rusty. Rusty escapes thanks to the help of a Morlock named Skids, whose power prevents anything from touching her, explaining why she's still attractive. Skids takes Rusty into the Morlock tunnels while Freedom Force and X-Factor follow, which is where X-Factor spots Magneto outside of the Hellfire Club. They then return to their base only to find that Artie has gone after Rusty into the Morlock tunnels and left a message for X-Factor. X-Factor goes and confronts Freedom Force, with Freedom Force fleeing after nearly killing Rusty since Destiny foresees untold death. Jean and Angel leave with Rusty while Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman look for Artie, who has befriended Legion Caliban. Now that the Mutant Massacre has really begun, the way I want to tackle this is to go through X-Factor's storyline completely before switching over to the X-Men storyline to do that completely, with their tie-in issues placed in line with their stories. Okay, first things first, X-Factor number 10. Thanks to Freedom Force, the word gets out that Warren, Angel's human name, is backing X-Factor, leading to a lot of public questions, and Warren's SO gets mad at him because she thinks he's with Jean. Angel and Jean go back into the tunnels to help the others, who are fighting the dastardly marauders that are murdering countless Morlocks. Some notable marauders include Arclight, who has destructive light powers, Scrambler, who shuts off the power of any mutant he touches, Scalp Hunter, who has death harpoons, and Sabretooth, a bigger, stronger, more feral version of Wolverine. Angel manages to locate and rescue Artie, but gets separated from the rest of X-Factor, letting the marauders beat him up, and Scalp Hunter grimly stabs his wings into the wall before preparing to cut them off. Next up is Power Pack number 27, which is an odd issue to read on its own, as the kids have had their powers swapped from a previous storyline. Franklin Richards telepathically sees Legion Caliban in danger, so the Power Pack head into the Morlock tunnels to save him. They have a run-in with Sabretooth before they escape and meet Wolverine, who continues after Sabretooth. We'll get to this later. The Power Pack then finds Legion Caliban under attack from Arclight, Scrambler, and Harpoon, who have energy harpoons, which is different than Scale Puncher somehow, and manage to hold their own until X-Factor arrive and drive the Marauders off. Beast and Iceman take Legion Caliban back to the surface, while Jean and Cyclops continue looking for Artie, and the Power Pack head home. This brings us to Thor number 373, which is mostly just a downtime issue unrelated to the Mutant Massacre, but ends with Thor finding Angel being tortured by the Marauders. And in Thor 374, Thor fights him and is able to beat them pretty handily, given that he's Thor, although Blockbuster, who has super strength, comes back for round 2 and gets crushed again. It really makes you wonder how different the Mutant Massacre would have been if Thor was there the whole time, but alas. Either way, Thor manages to save Angel and Artie and hands them off to Cyclops and Jean before using his powers to cleanse the tunnels of bodies, giving the Morlocks a Viking funeral, as Thor calls it. X-Factor picks back up with issue 11, which clumsily recaps the very important tie-ins before moving on. The massacre is basically over by this point, and although plenty of refugee Morlocks are being housed in the X-Factor complex, including Legion Caliban, some break off and get into a fight with the police. Cyclops and Jean intervene, but it still ends with the death of the entire Morlock splinter group except for Mask, who shaves people's faces. Angel is also in the hospital due to his injuries, and it turns out that he'll have to have his wings amputated. A mutant named Boom Boom also runs away from the criminal Vanisher, ending this arc of the Mutant Massacre on an unrelated cliffhanger. Apocalypse has also been collecting some wayward mutants to be his so-called Horsemen, obviously a reference to the Horsemen of Apocalypse. Next up is the X-Men half of the storyline, starting in 211, which opens with the Morlocks being massacred by the Marauders. In this case, Scale Puncher, Arclight, Harpoon, Vertigo, who gives people vertigo, and Riptide, who spins really fast and throws shurikens. One of the Morlocks alerts the X-Men, who will dash to the Morlock tunnels. Although the X-Men and Callisto are able to save some of the Morlocks, Nightcrawler is critically injured and put in a coma by Riptide, and Harpoon traps Kitty in her phasing state. Colossus goes to kill Harpoon in revenge, but Riptide gets in the way and impales Colossus a lot before Colossus snaps his neck, giving us a very threatening panel of an angry Colossus. The other Marauders escape, so Storm has all the wounded be brought to the surface, although she has Wolverine stay behind to get a captive for an interrogation, but she stresses that she only needs one captive. This leads us to New Mutants 46, where the X-Men return to the mansion and set up a medical bunker in their hangar, where they try to save as many Morlocks as possible, but are low on supplies and aren't doing so hot. The New Mutants try to help out, but are all on edge, and Rain and Roberto get into a fight. Sean's home is also rigged to explode when Sean and Ileana go looking for Sean's siblings, but they make it out alright. The New Mutants are then collectively attacked by Warlock's father, Magus, so Ileana takes everyone to Limbo, meaning that this Mutant Massacre tie-in leads right into the next New Mutant story arc. Back with the X-Men in issue 212, plenty of Morlocks die in the hangar, and Nightcrawler and Kitty aren't getting better. Colossus passes out from his wounds, and although Magneto stabilizes him, Colossus remains paralyzed and trapped in his metal form. Storm has a mental breakdown and tries to quit the X-Men, but Callisto fights her and convinces her to stay, reminding Storm that she has a responsibility to the X-Men as their leader to make them feel like their sacrifices were worth it. Wolverine, meanwhile, runs into Sabretooth, who we know from long ago. The two get into a vicious battle for the life of the Morlock healer, whom Wolverine saves when he collapses the tunnel on Sabretooth. During this fight is also presumably when Wolverine runs into Power Pack, and Thor's cleansing of the tunnels happens between this issue and the next, giving us an approximate timeline of the massacre. Sabretooth also pops up in Daredevil 238, kind of just vibing while he waits to kill the X-Men, more animal than ever. He and Daredevil fight, and that's about it. Back to Uncanny X-Men 213, Psylocke tries to prove her worth by using Cerebro to scout the mansion for Marauders, but by the time she notices Sabretooth arrive, it is too late, and he breaks Cerebro. Psylocke fights back, giving Sabretooth a chase around the mansion before Wolverine arrives and duels him. While Sabretooth is distracted, Psylocke probes his mind to learn what the Marauders wanted, which is that they worked for a man named Sinister who needed the Morlock cleared out of his way. With the probing done, Wolverine and Sabretooth throw each other off a cliff, although Wolverine is saved by Rogue. Her worth having been proven, Psylocke is welcome onto the X-Men, much to her pleasure. Issue 214 serves as an epilogue to the Mutant Massacre, with the parasitic marauder Malice feeding on Dazzler's pent-up aggression to make her go wild. Storm, Rogue, Psylocke, and Wolverine, our brand new tiny X-Men team, go help out, with Malice possessing the X-Men and making them fight, even having Rogue reveal herself to the police, although Storm's force of will is able to overcome Malice and destroy her. With Dazzler on the run again, Storm offers her a place among the X-Men, which she accepts. Overall, the Mutant Massacre isn't really a crossover as we know it today. The main thing is that it's not really its own complete story. Sure, it starts with the death of the Morlocks, but it ends spinning out into new plot threads. is just another chapter in the soap opera of the X-Men, with its effects lasting a while and no clear conclusion in sight. Plus, with all the hype it gets as this seminal X-Men storyline, it's really not that good. X-Factor is all over the place, constantly going back and forth between their base and the tunnels, and caring more about the drama than the actual conflict. The X-Men storyline, on the other hand, feels rushed and unfocused, like there are too many moving pieces and none are given enough attention. I should feel something when Kitty and Nightcrawler nearly die, but they just move so fast that they have little impact. Issue 13 is easily the best issue of the crossover, being a complete story about Psylocke proving herself to the team against the backdrop of the massacre, although the Power Pack tie-in is really solid and probably comes in second. Going into it hyped, it was honestly a disappointment. And honestly, outside of New Mutants, this whole era was weak. The Nimrod storyline should have been better and tied in much better to Rachel's ending. X-Factor is just so dramatic, like it's trying to be Claremontian without understanding why it works, and the Mutant Massacre was a scattered, rushed decimation with no focus or impact. New Mutants was stellar, though, probably having its best run yet, even picking up from the Hunt for Karma. It sometimes feels like Claremont can only write one really great series at a time, which is highly understandable, and this time just happened to be New Mutants. Next time we resolve our dangling plot threads, and head towards another dark event, the fall of the mutants. Be grateful none of our main cast died this time. See you then.